Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dr Ansa Jordaan, CEO of Exclaim Innovations, a South African-based governance, risk, and compliance platform that helps organizations centralize legal content, risk registers, incident reporting, audit, and dashboards. Ansa, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Lawrence, and good morning to everyone watching. I think, we manage risk, and I would say this is a high risk inviting me to an unscripted interview. The older we get, the more we say unfiltered things. So we might get into trouble, but looking forward to meeting with you and the team.
No, absolutely. And I can promise you I won't be asking you any gotcha questions, so you don't have to worry about that. And so if you don't mind, for the sake of the viewers and the listeners, just giving us a little bit more context beyond how I've positioned Exclaim, what it is that you do, your areas of operations, etc.
Thank you so much, Lauren. So essentially what we sell is fully integrated GRC software. Now, that sounds like a big word, but essentially we integrate your auditing, your legal compliance management, your risk management all in one tool so that you can see what happens in your business. And I think a lot of people will say, but that's probably for the banks or for the big people. It is actually not. You can have a small little manufacturing business and you need to make sure whatever you manufacture complies with the laws. Or for instance, example, and I've seen that you might have an office and you're sharing a security guard. But this security guard, in terms of your CIRA laws, needs to be certified. So your business could actually close today if you don't have a certified legal practitioner. Then in terms of risk, we're not talking all of these things that makes you confused in terms of financial liquidity and solvency figures. We're talking about what is my business plan? Even if you're a small company, what do I want to achieve? So let's just say I want to increase my sales by 10%. Now, risk management is all about that. So what can I do to make sure that I achieve this? So it's like a bit of a weight management thing. I want to lose 5 kgs. I'm walking past this restaurant that's got this huge, these big muffins that always smells nice. And a typical mitigation action would be, I don't walk past there, I eat before I go. And this is exactly this. This is logical things to set goals for your business. And then risk management helps you to achieve that. So that's essentially that, but an easy to use tool. And you got one page to see where your business is standing. What laws are applicable to me? Do I have basic controls in place? What am I trying to achieve? What things could go wrong? And then you have your auditors, be it your outsourced auditors, confirming what you're already thinking. So that's GRC in a nutshell, I think.
And when you look at Exclaim's journey over the past few years, what's been the guiding vision behind how you've shaped both the product and the culture?
That's quite an interesting question. So Exclaim started in the University of Johannesburg many years ago, early 2000s. We were grabbed by the ear and I was told that I needed to teach people risk management, mostly for the banking guys. And I just couldn't teach them on an Excel spreadsheet. Excel spreadsheets have got their benefits, right? But you've got one-to-many relationships. So we basically developed the software to teach guys the concepts. Back in those days, risk management and compliance wasn't big, and it was essentially your FSPs that used it. It has evolved tremendously. I see people coming to me to say, I'm considering selling this product. What laws will be applicable on this? And those are the things. So it's evolved so much that every company has got this within their software. So it's something you have to have kind of to. In the old days we had financial systems. Now we have GRC systems. So it's things that we have to have. And what's interesting, and proudly South African, we are finalists, international compliance innovators. So South Africa is right at the top internationally with compliance management, either in Ireland and Australia. We kind of right at the top to manage these things properly with our face and our figure. Despite the grey listing and despite all the corruption, we really have systems to manage this. And I think this is also important if you have a business that you want to have to run business ethically and get international buy-in. This is the stuff you have to have in place. Make sure your business is run ethically, compliant. There's dashboards to prove that you are running this on a proper governance level as well. So a quick answer is it initially started as a training tool, and now it's in every company's and most of the regulators' offices. So we most of the regulators use Exclaim, your SARS and your FSCA and your CCMA, but then you use it for your daily activities as well.
That's amazing. And what trade-offs do you feel you've had to make between innovation and reliability, especially in a compliance-driven environment?
That's such a good question and I think our logo is innovations to shout about. So we're very, very innovative. So that's why we finalist in this as well. And what we found, and this is so nice, South Africans are very creative. They innovate the whole time. So in our software, we always did that few steps ahead of the rest of the pack. So even with your standards, so people will say to us, are you compliant with ISO 31000 or compliant to this? And we're way ahead of the standard. So that's crazy. So we've got this really innovative things. And then we get back to government that runs most of their stuff on the PFMA and the procurement policies. And they want old things, or you would submit a tender and the tender is still hard copy, deliver 5 copies to the office. So that's really frustrating for us. We really want to get everybody on that level. But what's exciting, and it's not negative, some of our biggest customers are government customers, and they started to use the tools and they're starting to see the benefits. And this is what makes it worth your while, because we're seeing that everybody is upgrading, they're starting to use the software, and there's benefits to that. And there's some real hard evidence that there's savings in terms of procurement, there's compliance in terms of laws, and that's where it gets exciting is yes, there is still a lag with some of the companies, and there's still people that don't want to use the tools, but there's so much innovation and progress as well. And then in my research that I've done for my thesis, it seems like the biggest portion of budget is allocated to compliance software tools, because it's you can't manually, there's 1,500 odd laws just in South Africa. That excludes many of your standards, etc. So now imagine you have to analyze all of those, you have to comply with that. So it just makes logical sense that you implement tools to automate this.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And it sounds like you already are positioning yourself as a leader in the GRC African landscape. But where do you see the biggest opportunity for Exclaim in terms of leading the conversation going forward?
I think this is such an exciting question as well, because I did my thesis and this was interesting. So I took legislation from every continent. So I selected states in America and South America, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, some in Europe. And I compared the laws that we all need to comply with. So in other words, labor, health and safety, and then our protection of personal information, or GDPR. And I measured that across the world. And the result was very interesting. It came back that there's a 90% comparison or the same thing across all continents up to a level of 90%. So in other words, we aren't so unique, we aren't so different to the rest of the world, and that we could physically, if you have a company that's got subsidiaries in America or in Australia or in Europe, you could physically put those standardized checklist down anywhere in the world and it will still work for you. So that's the thing. So we're not just concentrating Africa. We actually now have these multinational companies that need to comply everywhere. And this poor compliance officer now needs to find millions of laws, hundreds of thousands, maybe not millions, but hundreds of thousands of laws. And they have to make sure, and some of them are chemical companies. So you can imagine if there's an explosion, people could die, or there could be food poisoning. So the big progress, or to where we want to move to, is to actually put it down and say, when you do business anywhere in the world, we could standardize this and create those specific laws, with FICA, for instance. It's very similar. We all call it different things all over the world, but it's the same thing. You guys do a lot of work in Bitcoin and financial stuff. If we could put the standardization, and I think that's something that I want to push on an international scale, is to prove to people we aren't that different. Maybe we speak a different language, but in business, we do the same thing. And that's what we want to go and get that standardization of GRC systems across the world. And that will just make business so much easier and so much more affordable and economical, I think.
And Ansa, why would you say that it isn't already standardized? Is it just purely a bit of an educational gap? And if that is the case, how are you tackling that challenge?
So I think it's a lot of ego things. So when you get to America with the 51 states, that they have, each state has got their own unique legislation. So they are saying we're unique, we govern ourselves. So it's a question, I think, of politics and ego. There's a king or a president that wants to, I'm governing this and we've got our own laws. And whether they will agree to it, that's going to be a bit of a push in America. But if you look at Europe, and they really now settled on many guidelines and standards in terms of GDPR. So I think that's going to be a good move. South Africa with the African Union, and we also part and parcel of that, have agreed to all the cybercrime laws, the African laws. So definitely there's a lot of movement. I think we just need to kind of get the big Americas on the wagon, and it's an education thing. I think we need to speak up. We need to be at the international conferences and tell them and sell the benefits. And I think the people will agree. It's just getting the leadership to agree. And that's part and parcel of all our jobs, to say we need to push for standardization across the world. Yes, maybe you are unique in certain ways in terms of your processes, but you know what, we've got standardization, and it will protect the consumer as well, because they will then get stuff that they know they can rely on, and that's standardized and that's well governed, and that will affect our grey listing as well. If we can bring out standardization standards, and that will affect our corruption laws as well. So I think we all need to contribute a little bit to that, right?
Absolutely. So given Exclaim's academic roots, how did you manage the evolution from a knowledge-driven origin into a commercially competitive technology business?
It took many years and hard work. That's all I can say. That's the easy answer. And everybody always say, I want to work for myself. And you being in the situation, you work really, really hard. So I physically had to start cold calling from my one office and one phone and say, I've got something to show you. Do you want to have a look at that? And, you physically start, and then we were very blessed, and we do very little marketing, and all our stuff is word of mouth. And my feeling is also, if I can give any advice to any business, is, always exceed every buyer or customer's expectations. You always want to give them more than they expected, and you always want to bring a little bit more innovation. So there's nothing nicer for me when somebody logs in and they would say, "Oh, but this is so easy. Oh, this works so nicely. Oh, did you add this as well?" And I think that's what pushed it from, yes, I could use the academic thing to say, guys, so there's integrity in my software. It's not something that, like a Steve Jobs, we created in the garage. We created it in the university, and it's got integrity. But from there, it's roll up your sleeves and then be honest, work hard, and give people more than they ever expect to. And then that thing of you're never done. You're never done. It's like every day is innovation, right? So you're not going to, when you get at the end of the year, now I've got software. You never have. You evolve daily. And I think that's the thing. It's been an evolution and a innovation for the last 20 years. So you have to have the gut to, throw out things today, and tomorrow you're building something new. But that's the true thing. You see a gap, something that people really need, you understand their need, and then you supply that need, but in an honest way, and always whatever you do, do it awesomely, so do more than it's expected, and just do that extra thing. And I think that's been the success, is that we always try and give more than people expect. The other thing that I've also learned is, if you put software down and it's difficult to use, nobody's going to say to you, it's too difficult to use. I've not seen anyone admit that ever. I have seen tender meetings where guys will say, that stuff we had, we couldn't work it. And that's the other thing, is whatever you do, don't make it too difficult. Don't pretend you're the professor and you're the smart one and nobody else can follow you and do what you're doing. Take people with you and make sure they have fun. We spend a lot of time at work, 8 hours, 9 hours. You don't want to sit on a boring thing and it bores you. You want to have fun as well. So life's too short not to have fun. So you will see with Exclaim as well, it's colors. We don't work with words, we work with colors, and guys know wherever they are, if I'm on the purples or the oranges or the reds, and it makes it easy. So I think that's the other side. So yes, it was for training, but we made it fun, we made it convincing, and we kind of met a demand on a easy and an affordable basis. Also in terms of pricing, you don't want to make it so expensive it doesn't add value. And that's also something that I've learned. We probably the most affordable in the market, but it's also, you want to give value, and you don't want people to think, they pay too much for something. You actually want to leave them with, wow, I've got the deal of the century. This is lovely. It works for me. It's not that expensive. And that keeps or retains your clients. I've got clients that's been with me 16, 17 years. So that also speaks to retention of the customers. So Lawrence, I'm speaking a lot, and I must give you some opportunities as well here. So
no, it's fascinating. And you touched on innovation a few minutes ago, and I'd just like to dive into that in a little bit more detail. Where do you see the next phase of innovation emerging for Exclaim? I mean, is it across your product? Is it across partnerships? Is it data intelligence? What does the future look like from an innovation perspective?
So that's quite interesting. I think when you say innovation, everybody thinks AI, right? So yes, we are bringing in AI in a very unique way, in terms of, if you have your business and you're saying, Ansa, what law specifically would be applicable for us? So we are teaching our AI to help you with that, and to have a interesting discussion. Also, if you release a new product, so let's just say you're thinking of taking lay-bys or deposits from a customer. If you're not very careful, you have to register as a bank, and you have to comply with all the bank laws. So we kind of have a companion to say, if I do this, what would be the legal implications, which I think is quite a novel way of utilizing AI and bringing in a lot of technology. But I also think collaborating with other guys in other countries, because that's where we want to move and get that standardization going. So the faster we collaborate and get standardization, the easier it is for anybody to do business. So yes, we are doing that. And then also platforms. So technology evolves on a daily basis, so that we're always on utilizing technology that is safe and secure. And the hot topic lately is we put everything on the cloud, but people are so unaware of the risk on the cloud. So you get your legal documents that you sign and you're thinking, yes, I've signed my contract on this thing, but what you don't understand is this contract is safe somewhere in America where we don't have GDPR, and your contract is utilized in terms of the terms and conditions. So also to make people aware of, yes, cloud is lovely. It's something that we need to do, but there are also quite a lot of risk. So we're also going out and seeing, is that the way to go? Because most of your cloud hosting companies do not take accountability for anything in your data. And I think people think if it's on the cloud, it's protected and the guys takes accountability for your data. That's not the case. So also bringing that awareness to say, if we are going cloud way, where do we want to go? So there's a lot of looking at, is cloud the way to go? How are we going to make it safe and sound? Growing in technology, doing a lot of collaborations across the world to get the standardization, and then obviously utilizing AI in a very unique way.
And governance and compliance are often seen as necessary evils, and I put that in inverted commas because I don't mean any offense. But from your perspective, what are the biggest bottlenecks you've observed when organizations try to embed GRC tools like Exclaim into their day-to-day operations?
That is I can go on for hours. I'm thinking, where should I start? So I think the one thing is you need a lot of guidance in terms of understanding your business. So let's just get back. So if you don't understand your business, and that's with any system, if you don't understand your business, you're not going to successfully implement your financial system because you don't know your GL accounts. Similarly, if we start implementing and you're saying, what laws do I need to comply with? You need to understand, what are you doing? And it's many a times where I would sit with somebody and I would say, well, do you serve food? And they're thinking that's not a big thing, but if you have a canteen, you need to comply with foodstuffs, and people have admitted to that. Or so understanding your business, but then also let's just look at risk management. And yeah, I can tell a short little story which is quite interesting. So you get really dynamic CEOs, and Phil Rue was the CEO of Pioneer a couple of years ago, and I had the pleasure of setting up his risk management profile. And he said to me, whenever you have more than 10 risk in your business, you're not managing your business well. And I tend to agree with him. But I said to him, so what are the things that you believe is risk? And he said, and this is more than 10 years ago, Ansa, everybody is going to start to live healthy. And sugar foods and stuff is not the in thing anymore. And he realized this 10 years ago. And I said, so what are you going to do? And he said, no, I'm buying this company with healthy foods. And that was Future Life. And Future Life is now really, really big. But he realized this 10 years ago that everybody's now going vegan and vegetarian and healthy. And that's a thing with risk management. You can have the tools, but you have to, and at that point, he also said sugar tax is going to become a big thing. That's 10 years ago. So, and that's the thing. So if I ask a CEO of a company, where do you see your company in 10 years? What do you think are the big changes in your company? Where do you see the stumble blocks? Those are so if you have somebody like a Phil, the software sells itself. It's good stuff. You manage your progress. But you can get to a customer and they would say, we do a strategic plan once every 10 years. It hasn't been updated and they don't have this dream for their company. So if I can get it across, the most successful thing to implement the GRC is a car that takes you from point A to B. But if your CEO and executive doesn't know where they want to go, that's where, we have those hampering things. So for somebody that knows where they want to go, it's exciting. It's, you get to get somebody to have a car, which they normally walked, and they can see the results quickly because the software includes key risk indicators and key performance indicators. So you can on a daily basis see if you're getting closer to your targets. You don't have to have this long meetings with people. You just log in and you can see the trends, what's happening in your business. So that's the thing. So if you know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, that's an easy install.
And Ansa, how do you measure whether adoption has truly taken root within your new onboards beyond things like logins and dashboards, etc.? How do you know whether you're having an impact?
That's also an important question. So I think it's with contract renewals, so it's customer retention. So how many times do customers come back? They're not canceling. So cancellation contracts coming back to you. We frequently also have little sessions where I teach or show them concepts, and it just tends to grow. So it's growing rapidly. We also see with your marketing analysis in terms of how many people are coming, how many people are asking for demos. And then the obvious one is increase in sales. So this has exploded, big blessing, but also exploded. And initially we said, is it because guys kind of have to do it now because a lot of legislation forces you to have it. So your insurance companies, your FSP needs to have this as part and parcel of legislation. But funny enough, it's our manufacturers, it's our mining companies that's actually growing quite substantially, and government adopting this. And I think people are seeing the benefits of that. So yeah, your standardized measuring tools, sales, actions, people attending your conferences, and also with our collaboration with the Institute of Risk Management and the Compliance Institute, substantial growth in interest in the topics. We've just had our conferences, the IRMSA conference at the Gallagher Estate, and then also the compliance one at Voda World. And it was the biggest ones we've ever had, and we had people internationally attending. So there's definitely a demand in implementing tools to run your business properly. And also and they're also realizing this is something you can't do manually, right? So there's definitely, but we see substantial growth in attending podcasts, training sessions, proposals, sales, conferences. So all good. And then also there's quite substantial literature in terms of technology in terms of your, they call it RegTech, regulatory tools. And they estimate that this will be billions of dollars invested in that this year. So hopefully a lot of this comes South African way, So we're pushing that to see if we can be the leader. There's no excuse that we can't be. So pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about RegTech, RegTech and GRC are very highly competitive and trust-driven sectors. When you think about Exclaim's market positioning, what makes your value proposition resonate more strongly with your clients? And are there any areas where you are still feeling misunderstood, perhaps?
I think we're positioning well in terms of our tools and the colors and the content because guys have never seen it. But I think there's still a little bit of a thing that technology comes from America or technology comes from the East. And if you look at all the marketing spec, South Africa, other than Tencent, has not released a big app that's been successful worldwide. There's not something like your... So that still needs to happen, other than for one single app and maybe with a Takealot side. So I think there's still a lot of I think incorrect assumptions that South Africa is not tech ready and we don't have the technology and the people to do that. So we still have to advertise and prove that we are on the same level and we can release those. And that's kind of the only, it's that assumption from everybody based on marketing that those are the guys that does the successful tools. But we will prove it. I think it's just that when we have the first successful applications out there, they will understand that we do have the ability to do that. And I think the other thing that also impacts is if you look at technology in Africa, there's still a lot of African countries that doesn't have Wi-Fi or that doesn't have technology. And sadly, we're still kind of being seen as part of Africa, and not that we are materially different to certain countries in Africa. So it's just getting past those misconceptions, I believe.
And as Exclaim has expanded into new markets across Africa, what have you learned about tailoring your go-to-market approach to different regulatory or cultural contexts that you might be able to learn from as you mentioned, the sort of the States, or maybe even Europe, sort of these looming potential, much larger markets for you to approach?
Culturally, Africa is daunting. Certain of the countries have specific kind of ways that you do business. Teams meetings like these are sometimes not acceptable. You have to go and meet people, so you have to get in and fly and have those ones. So there are banks that's commercially viable, but on a standardized, we have to scroll down a little bit. There's also not the type of service and technology and Wi-Fi that can run this. So yes, and also GRC is not widely adapted. We still see a lot of, I'm the auditor, I audit. You are the compliance officer, you audit. You are the risk manager. They don't really believe in integrated tools because each one, I think it's a lot of politics again, likes their own kingdom. However, we're trying to fight that as well. So on the Compliance Institute of Zimbabwe and Namibia, we are presenting the benefits and we're getting a slow drive to turn that around, but totally different than doing business in Singapore, for instance. So I suppose no product is a one fit in terms of that, So currently we can put down legislation for a South African-based company with multiple branches, easy enough to do that. But if you start in Africa with branches everywhere else, your approach is completely different.
Got you. And you alluded to this a few moments ago, that being seen as an African-grown solution is a challenge in itself. How are you balancing being seen as that whilst trying to compete with global GRC vendors?
There's no easy answer. So our approach, or what we're thinking, is to make sure that we get the software utilized in all the big countries, your Americas, your Europes, your Australias, your Singapores. And then to turn back and say, guys, but look, you can see the tool is working. It's competing better than any of your homegrown tools. And over time, to change it in that way, that it's not maybe seen as a South African tool. I think if we open an international office, that would be an easy and a fast solution, right? But then the fact is, then it's not proudly South African anymore. So a quick answer, yes, we can open an international office, but we still want to keep our roots here and show people that it can be done. And hopefully in my time, we can still prove that point.
Mm. And what would scaling with Sol look like for Exclaim? I mean, growth without losing that authenticity of your origin story presents a challenge in itself. But of course, growth would be amazing. How do you approach that?
That's that's also an interesting one. So it would be because everything will have a flavor, right? So, unfortunately, if we install Exclaim, say in the East, it will not look the same because your market research will show that the guys will not use it in a certain colors or certain fonts, and it needs to do certain things. In America, it would be a totally different thing. So in a way, you would lose your look and feel in terms of the software. However, we can settle on certain concepts. It needs to be affordable, it needs to be honest, it needs to be easy to utilize. And then we can lose some of the actual customization for use in the specific countries.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so GRC rarely happens in isolation. It really depends on sort of a web of auditors, consultants, legal experts, regulators. How have partnerships shaped Exclaim's evolution so far?
Okay, so and I think that concept. So in other words, if we kind of want to move away from the concept of GRC as this big laborious thing, we kind of want to say, as a CEO for you, what would you like to see? And you would get a single dashboard to say, guys, there's manufacturing issues, or if you're a financial firm, here's some customer complaints. What is being done on the customer complaints? Here's my top 10 risks. I see there's some movement on this. Guys, what are we doing? And then audit is purely giving you assurance as to where you are. So nobody can tell you it makes sense. So you're looking at one dashboard. And I think that's what we want to show everybody is that this is not these separate parts in this big thing. I want you to be comfortable as a CEO of a company to look at your dashboard and to be able to manage your business. So it brings a lot of guys together in terms of here's the audit team, here's your compliance team, but ultimately everybody is serving their exco in terms of where's your business, where are these guys standing. Now, in terms of partnership, Exclaim develops software, but it needs to be implemented. So we utilize good consultants in the form of external auditing companies that knows what they're doing, and we're bringing in those consultants so that we keep we clean in our approach. We, the software developers, we, the guys that rolls out, we, the installers, but we have really well accredited installers, CAs, and guys that really knows their issues in terms of that. And then when we bring in the auditors as well, it would be your external qualified auditors that will be doing all of the consulting and the auditing and stuff like that. But you don't have to use our partners in terms of that. If you have a auditor that you rely, we teach them, we put them on the software, or if you have your own expertise, and what we do is we can also do a bit of hand-holding, rolling out, and then you do it yourself. But ultimately, we don't see GRC as this big complete system. What we really want is like everybody utilizes this to manage their business successfully, and you don't have pockets of information and silos that's giving you a different picture of your real business. And it doesn't have to be expensive. So if you're a small customer, you're not looking at a big investment. It's like a small garden. You know, you get your little fertilizer box, or you can go to the farm and you have this whole fertilizer thing. So you can really grow it as much as you want to in terms of doing that. But I think a business always needs partners, and it's building the community of guys, so that's what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we take a step back and look at the sort of GRC landscape from a macro lens, what's the biggest gap that you see between technology providers and regulatory bodies right now?
That's quite an interesting one. So we had one where one of our customers in Namibia was saying that they have struggles with their pension fund act. This is just a standardized example. And when we looked at the regulators' websites and the acts that they actually issued, it's more than 10 years ago that they've updated that pieces of legislation. Or you will get some of our countries in the form of Eswatini or Lesotho that still runs on Gmail accounts. They don't have updated. They expect people to comply with the laws, but there's no central place of legislation or what is the latest version of the legislation or who needs to comply with it. So you're held accountable in a way for things that you don't even have access to. So that's also the point we trying to bridge that gap with people to say, this is the, so we connecting with all the regulators in these countries and in South Africa. So as legislation comes out, we have direct access and we share it with our customers to say, this is the latest and we build content. So this is what the world is about, right? This content management. So we're finding the content that you need. So you don't have to go and search for which is the latest version of basic conditions of employment. How does it get updated? So part and parcel of our services, the content that's in there is the latest of the country, and we do it internationally. So if you're looking for Eswatini or Lesotho, we actually have a more up-to-date repository of laws than the government have. So you have those. We found countries where the only copy of the Companies Act is still on a hard copy and it's been written on, so there's interesting things like that, but we've created that content. So if you need to look at that, that's part and parcel of what we do. So we build the content. We also share with the regulators. So whatever we have, we will share, and that makes their service a bit better as well. And eventually what we're looking for is that they will all just point to Exclaim to say, well, there's the latest laws and the versions of the laws. There you go. So, you truly have regulators that's really effective, and they use technology, and we see it a lot. We think it's not happening, but there are quite a lot of the regulators. Your Department of Science and Innovations is one of those. They really use the technology. So there's definitely, so from a content point of view, going back to the regulators, we can also give feedback. So for instance, on your Health and Safety Act, you have to do a drug test for your employees on a daily basis. That's something that we can't afford. And working in an office environment, you might not do that because there's not a big danger in terms of that. So we can give feedback and say, this is something that's been requested. Can we look at amendments? So we also give feedback in terms of what we're getting from our clients in terms of this cannot work, or can we have a look at this? And so long answer short.
And Ansa, looking back at your journey with this Exclaim, what's a lesson that has fundamentally changed the way that you lead?
When somebody says to you, open your own company, you run. So no, I think what I've learned over the years is that you never, and I think that's what Nelson Mandela has also said, you never stop learning, and you learn every day, and what you thought today is correct might not be applicable or appropriate tomorrow. So you need to keep your head down and learn and be curious and learn as much as you want to. And that's a thing, my idea that I had 16 or 19 years ago when we started Exclaim, I had this big dream going internationally, and this is what's happening. And then your technology changes in a single year and you realize you're not. So you have to evolve. So I've learned is to head down. You never know all the answers. You need to evolve on a daily basis and learn as much as you can, because we don't have the answers. And what I'm thinking might be the answer today might not even be appropriate or applicable tomorrow. So that's kind of what is, just be open, be flexible, and just learn every day so that you can evolve with this speed of technology and the speed that we're going lately through every single day. You need to keep up and evolve with that.
And can you think back on a risk that you took that now, in hindsight, changed the company's trajectory?
That's also a good story. So, I wanted to study art initially. Back in the 80s, my parents said to me, that is not doable. You will probably die hungry. So I got a bursary to go and study BCom accounts. My parents thought that was very appropriate for a female. She could go and earn a salary. And it somehow worked that I could go to my honors here and I could do articles. And I was one of the first 6 to qualify as a CA. And I had a very nice, cozy job with salaries. And I worked at the university, which made that I had 4 months worth of leave. And somehow, when I developed this course at the university, I realized there's a demand and it's going to grow. And this thing in the back of my mind said, I need to do it. I need to do it. And the biggest risk thing I did was to jump out of a very secure job with a good salary, good leave, and to start this from a telephone, a fax machine, and a cell phone, and to start. So that was the most riskiest thing I've done. And then, and in the majority of times, what we do is if somebody says this would be a lovely feature, that and my programmers know it, they would look at me and say, so you said yes, how long do we have? And that's something that we frequently do as well, that if I see, I understand IT in terms of what's doable, and just say yes, don't go and have too much red tape in your business because it's not going to grow. So don't be scared to and have too much red tape. Sometimes if it's not financially such a big burden on you, jump. So I think, yeah, that was the biggest risk, to just jump and start your own business from a cozy job. But it was worthwhile, and what a ride, it's 19 years later and it's just been what a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like it's been an amazing ride. And if we look ahead 5 years into the future, what does success look like for Exclaim in that world?
I've got a long wish list, but I'm not sure if I can get the full wish list. But I think what I want is that Exclaim is completely vested and home in every continent, so I want to roll that out. I want to achieve the fact that people start acknowledging that legislation doesn't need to be that different across the bases, and that GRC becomes a household thing, that people don't think GRC is a luxury. It's a tool for you to manage your business successfully, and it's not something that I need to think about. And I think if I can leave that as a legacy in terms of, yes, we have an established South African company that changed legislation and risk management across the world, that people acknowledge that we are not different, and that people understand that this is a necessity. I think I would be happy in 5 years' time, but it's a big wish list.
Well, it's always important to have those goals so that at least you know what you are aiming at, right?
Absolutely. And that's why you have a risk management tool, so I can manage my progress. So, yeah.
Well, Ansa, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a fascinating conversation, diving into GRC from a macro perspective, but also having a look at Exclaim and your journey to date. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence. It was lovely meeting up.
That's it for today's episode of the Aegance Offscript Podcast. If this conversation sparks something within you, a thought, a question, or a new way of seeing your own business, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, everyone.